Stories are the most powerful thing on earth. They are literally life and death. Wars are waged based on the story of who is the hero and who is the villain. You are the result of a story your parents told each other, the one-night stand, the soulmate, and friends who became so much more. Life and death. So wouldn't you like to understand them better, these stories? How Story Works, an elegant guide to the craft of storytelling by Lani and Rich, demystifies stories and helps you understand why you love what you love, why you hate what you hate, and why prologues are almost always a bad idea. How Story Works by Lani and Rich. Available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and paperback form. Get your copy today.
Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm story expert with a sudden urge to dedicate my productive cooperation, Lani and Rich.
And I'm film scholar heading towards an ungainly collapse, Noelle LaCroix. And we're here today to talk about Dead Things, the 13th episode of Season 6. Dead Things aired on February 5th, 2002, and was written by Stephen S. DeKnight and directed by James A. Contner.
Still Pretty is a fully spoiled, full-spectrum Buffy podcast, so if you haven't seen all of the show, go take care of that, and we'll be here slinging the double meat and pounding the big evil.
Some days are harder than the really hard days. So let's go on patrol. In Dead Things, Buffy and Spike almost have a conversation after a sex session that somehow ended with them under the carpets in his crypt. But when he asks if she trusts him, she responds.
Never.
Meanwhile, Andrew and Jonathan are unpacking in the geek trio's dumpy new lair, and Warren finishes working on his newest invention, which clocks in at an 11 on the scale of ick, a cerebral dampener.
Now with this baby, we can make any woman we desire our willing sex slave.
Buffy asks Tara to meet at the double meet to talk. Tara thinks it's about Willow, but Buffy says no, it's about her. Spike can hit her, and Buffy's worried she might have come back wrong. She asks Tara to look into it, and Tara agrees. With Jonathan and Andrew parked outside in the van, Warren goes into a bar and finds Katrina. She's not pleased to see him, and with good goddamn reason, but just as she's about to leave, Warren activates the cerebral dampener and...
I love you, Master.
Buffy returns home to hang out with Dawn for the evening, but Dawn's going over to Janice's, so Buffy goes out to the bronze with Xander, Anya, and Willow. While everyone's dancing, Buffy goes up to the balcony and watches her friends, when Spike comes up behind her and they have sex while Spike tells her that she belongs in the dark and the shadows with him.
Look at your friends and tell me you don't love getting away with this.
The trio bring Katrina back to their lair, dress her up in a French maid's outfit, and make her serve them champagne. Then Warren takes her into the bedroom where he's about to rape her when the effects of the cerebral dampener wear off. Katrina wakes up and tries to leave, telling them that what they are about to do to her is rape. She pushes past Jonathan and Andrew and is about to leave when Warren cracks her in the head with the champagne bottle. She's dead. While Jonathan and Andrew freak out about Buffy figuring out the connection and knowing what they did, Warren has another idea.
We have two problems, the body and the Slayer. Well, what if there was a way that we could take care of them both with one big stone?
Willow bumps into Tara outside of the magic box, and they have a friendly but awkward conversation. Tara says she was looking for Buffy and asks Willow to tell Buffy she was looking for her before taking off. That night, while patrolling, Buffy resists going to Spike's crypt and instead comes across 3 demons who fracture time for her. She experiences a strange loop where she tries to save a crying Katrina from the demons, but then ends up accidentally hitting Katrina, who falls down a steep hill. She and Spike kill the demons, and when Buffy goes to help Katrina, she finds the dead body.
She's dead. I killed her.
Back in the trio van, Katrina crawls inside and morphs into Jonathan. The plan worked. Buffy thinks she killed Katrina. Spike tells Buffy to go home and go to bed, to trust him. He'll handle it. She does, but has a nightmare about sex with Spike and killing Katrina. She wakes up and goes to talk to Dawn to tell her that she has to go to the police and confess what she's done.
Donnie, I have to.
Dawn gets upset and yells at Buffy and runs off. Buffy goes to the police station, but just as she's about to go in, Spike pulls her back into an alley and tells her he took care of everything. They'll never find the body. But then 2 cops come out and talk about a woman who washed up on the riverbank. Spike tries to keep Buffy from confessing, but she beats the hell out of him, saying he doesn't have a soul, he can't feel anything real. She continues to hit him, then suddenly stops, looking with horror at his battered face.
You always said the one you love, right?
Buffy goes into the police station, but just as she's about to confess, she hears them say Katrina's name and makes the connection to Warren. At the magic box, Anya figures out that the demons Buffy saw messed with her sense of time. Katrina was probably dead before she got there. Buffy knows it was Warren. While the trio celebrate over getting away with murder, Tara comes over to visit Buffy and tells her there's nothing wrong with her, but Buffy doesn't believe it. She must be wrong. Tara says no, and Buffy starts to cry, revealing that she's been having sex with Spike. When Tara tries to comfort her without judgment, she breaks down.
Please don't forgive me. Please.
All right, so I recently read a psychological study that said that content warnings are actually worse for triggering people's trauma. And since we are a fully spoiled Buffy podcast, anyone listening to this episode knows what we're going to talk about. But honestly, there are a couple of topics that I usually appreciate just getting a heads up about. So I think that's what I'm going to do from now on. Just a heads up. There's a discussion of sexual assault in this episode. And if that's something you'd rather skip at the moment, we wanted to give you a chance to just skip it. But if you're still with us, I will let you know that nobody's happy about having to have this discussion today. It's definitely not going to be a lot of fun. Noelle and I have kind of come into this with a fair sense of trepidation. So what we have done is we have pulled in alternate things that we can talk about and a series of dad jokes. So whenever anybody starts to get upset or we start to feel tense or whatever, we're just going to pull out a dad joke, kind of, mitigate some of the horrible stuff that we're talking about and then dive back in. That's the plan anyway. We'll see how it works. So Noelle, good to see you. And how do you feel about dead things?
Okay.
Right.
Strap in, right?
Yes.
So there are bad episodes and then there are bad episodes, which is to say there are episodes where I do not care for the writing. And then there are episodes where I just find the whole thing so upsetting.
Yes.
And, anyone want to guess which one this is?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, the thing I respect dead things. I think it's well written. I think it's well directed. I think it's a good episode. I think it addresses a lot of things that are I really like the stuff that we do with Buffy in this episode. I really love what we do with Tara. And I think that the overall story of the episode, what happens to Katrina, what these boys do, it's good storytelling. It's just so fucking hard to watch, and every time I watch it, it gets harder and harder to watch, and I hate watching it more and more. So it becomes especially challenging for me. It was hard for me to watch it this week. It was hard for me to write the notes this week. It was hard for me to pull the clips from the show this week. So right now, I gotta say, it's inappropriate to make a dad joke if you're not a dad. It's a faux pas.
Oh, God. I actually love the addition of dad jokes for this episode in particular. And I will tell you why.
Oh, yes. Why?
Because the villain in this episode is toxic masculinity, right? Mm-hmm. That is that is the big bad in this episode. In a lot of ways. And also Buffy's internal struggle, which we'll get to, which I still don't fully comprehend.
Yeah.
But part of what makes this episode so difficult to watch, and I really did try to dig in on, Mad Dogs 1 through 3, these guys who have this plan to Yeah. There's not even words. But what works about it.
Yeah.
And like, I do think it works. I think it's a really good episode.
Yeah.
It is just so unsettling, like start to finish. There are some little bits of delight, but they're all within the context of this really, really dark, grim.
Yeah, I hug Tara like a warm, fluffy blanket throughout this episode.
God.
I really do.
Oh my God. She's like, she's this beautiful gift in this episode. And also, only because we're dealing with like horror, like actual real world horror in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I was looking at these dudes and like what they're doing and how they're portrayed and how they like shift emotionally over the course of the narrative, and it's just so upsetting. The whole thing is so upsetting.
The whole thing is so upsetting, and that trying to parse out, how what on a scale of badness, how bad is Jonathan versus Andrew versus Warren, and I don't care. Like they're all equally, complicit in something that is so terrible, and which would have been stopped with any aversion to the like rampant misogyny involved in any of the things that they do. It's really horrifying. So it's kind of nice to have these like, weird dad jokes, which always make me laugh because they're just so fucking stupid. Because, we talk about like, and of course, like, all of the discussions about gender are highly suspect because of the way that we think about gender within our culture and all of that kind of stuff. But, just on it, like we're talking about a lot of things that are very toxic within a masculine framework, within a traditionally, culturally masculine framework. And these dad jokes, which are really, really sweet within a traditional culturally masculine framework, right? Exactly. So it's kind of nice to have a sweet masculine presence sprinkled throughout the discussion that we're going to have, which is really, really difficult. But I'm going to start on the ground upon which I am more firm, when I talk about like the story kind of stuff that's going on here. And we do have a good story. We have, characters, we have these guys with their goal of first, getting this girl and then getting rid of her after they've murdered her, which is really, really terrible. We've got Buffy, who wants to know what's wrong with her and is struggling with that internal conflict, which I think is really kind of lovely throughout as far as like the story goes. It's heartbreaking, but it's well drawn. But the thing that stands out to me in this episode, like a sore thumb, something that you just mentioned, is this stupid fucking plan. Like the trio's plan to get Buffy to think that she killed Katrina is so filled with complete chaos. It's a miracle that it even worked. I mean, how in the world could they have accounted and controlled for exactly how the demons would affect Buffy's experience of time? Plus, the experience of time outside of Buffy is apparently consistent. Like Spike is not affected by these demons, I guess because he's a vampire or whatever. But they can't control for any of this. They unleash these 3 demons who do something weird to time, but only to Buffy, not to Jonathan, who is there as Katrina, who has to, like, how do they control for all of that? How in the world did Jonathan take a backhand from Buffy and not immediately die anyway? Spike's there, not affected by the wonky time thing. We don't know why, I guess because he's a vampire. How could they possibly have planned for Buffy to hit Jonathan/Katrina right at the moment that they were standing on the hillside and they just fall down and roll, into the... It's such a dumb fucking plan. But the execution of it, as far as the storytelling goes, is cool and disorienting. And Warren's smug self-satisfaction when it works is both gross and even more slimy because it was just dumb fucking luck that it worked at all. And somehow that redeems this whole stupid thing for me because it shows a mediocre white man failing upward, which I find fitting for Warren.
Yeah. Yeah, it really works for Warren.
Yeah.
And I also feel like, it works for Jonathan too, in a way, in that Jonathan is always the one getting hurt by the tech or the magic or the plan or whatever. So like he's the one who gets the freeze ray frozen to his hand, and he gets punched by Buffy when he's disguised as a demon.
Yes.
And when they're using the magic to make the cerebral dampener, like he is the one who's holding he's constantly getting hurt. And so to have him there with a black eye, did you notice that?
Mm-hmm.
That I didn't notice that the first couple times through.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at him, after he transforms or whatever the fuck he does.
Yeah.
And he's standing there with this like beaten face, and it just adds this extra layer of toxicity to Warren and the whole, trio dynamic of Warren has no concern for anyone.
Yeah.
We know this.
Warren doesn't care about anything.
This is not,
yeah.
It's not a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
But Warren having no concern for the well-being of the people who are supposed to be on a team with him, I also find oddly chilling.
Yeah.
Like obviously, right?
Yeah.
He's the like, we're not supposed to like this dude.
Oh, but wouldn't it be more fun if there was something likable about Warren? Like if you felt, I don't know, that's what I liked about Spike. I liked that Spike had things about him that were likable, even when he was the big bad in season 2, I don't want to like Warren. I'm really glad I get to fully and completely and without complication just hate the fuck out of Warren. Like, that's nice, but it feels like it's a weaker character,
Yeah, he's so callous in a way that I don't know.
He's a psychopath. He really is.
He feels very written.
Yes.
He feels how, oh gosh, it's so hard to articulate this, but he feels how somebody callous feels.
Yeah.
Like, I believe that people have extremely good reasons for doing even the most horrific things that they do.
Mm-hmm.
And we sort of play with that a little bit with Warren in this episode, but not really. Like, okay, legit question I have.
Yeah.
When he's standing there with Andrew and Jonathan and Katrina, and they're like, Andrew and Jonathan are like, oh yeah, like they're all giggly and like, oh, she's really cute. And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? She's so, like, he goes off on like how beautiful she is and how perfect she, and there's this whole like, I feel like the narrative wants me to think that on some level Warren truly loved Katrina.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't
think we're supposed to think that. I don't think
so
that,
then,
yeah.
Are we supposed to, I guess
he talks about her like a car. She is a possession, and she is a possession that had the nerve to say no to him. This is a punishment scenario for him. She's beautiful. She's wonderful. And I'm going to make her do things that she doesn't want to do to me.
The way her nose crinkles up when she laughs as she's standing there with her like stone face is so eerie.
It is so the way, honestly, from, I was made to love you, from that moment in I was made to love you, when he says, shut up, Katrina, the way that he speaks to her, it's so awful. It's so, ugh. And so, yeah, Warren is just upsetting. So I'm glad we're talking about it at the beginning. We can get him like out of the way, Yeah. Because he is exactly, and I don't know. I know that, from my experience living in the world, as a female presenting person, right? That when you come up against misogyny in different spaces, and let me just say for the record that a lot of those are internal as well. You are installed with your standard working operating system misogyny as a kid in this culture, and that gets internalized as well. That there is such a chill. It really is, like when you say it's chilling, like it is literally chilling. The way in which it's not just a lack of regard for this woman. It is a hatred of her, and it is a hatred of women. The very idea that you would put, because Warren is a gifted, I guess, scientist or whatever, he's got gifts, he's got talents, that he would dedicate them to creating something that makes a woman his quote unquote willing sex slave, which is such a contradiction in terms I cannot fucking
let's
even.
That phrase, shall we?
I mean, first of all, since when does willing even a concern for him? Is that just something he says so that it doesn't trigger something in Jonathan and Andrew? Although let's not forget, this is not Jonathan's first run round this mind-controlling rape mulberry bush, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think willing in this sense means not resisting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, like, right? It's like there's the consent that is freely and enthusiastically given, and then there is the middle ground of not resisting.
Yeah.
Not resisting in an outward wow, this is hard to talk about.
Yeah.
Oh. The idea that, and we get it later with Buffy and Spike, and I want to talk about this when she says don't and he says stop me, and she doesn't do anything.
Right.
And the show plays that like that's consent.
Yeah.
And that is not how consent works.
No.
No isn't. It's so
just,
bad.
Yeah. No. And I mean, this
so
is the
bad.
thing, like consent requires enthusiasm, you know? And there are so many things that can contribute to a person who freezes, you know, in circumstances like this. The freeze is actually a very common response in which you can't say no. You're just so terrified.
Oh, I'm freezing in this conversation because that terror of stop me as a threat.
Yeah.
And then what are you going to do? Like the no already happened and then it wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't regarded. Like, and we get that parallel with Katrina as well, you know, in the bar when she's like, yo, I have set this boundary. You know, there's no us. I never wanted to see you again. And he's like, yeah, okay. But for real.
She has total and complete clarity about what she wants, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I find it's so fucking disturbing. And then, you know, we've got like, we know Warren, right? Warren is clearly like this, you know, okay.
He literally objectifies women. Literally objectifies women.
Women into objects. Like, this is what it is. But for the record, like, all of these guys are bad. And I think that we tend to view them on a sliding scale because Jonathan does, like, he is clearly bothered by this whole thing. The moment when Katrina says it's rape, you see Jonathan like blink, like he never thought of that before. Which after the events of Superstar, in which he mind controls and rapes these two Swedish twins, which is, there's so many levels of disgusting with all of that that I can't even. We talked about it in Superstar. You can go back and listen to that. We've had that discussion. So Jonathan, this is not his first, you know, his first rodeo with this kind of thing. But it does seem to be the moment that he's realizing it, you know, and that he actually like cares about it. Andrew is upset when he thinks that they're going to get caught. At the end, when they get away with it, you know, Jonathan's the only one who remains upset.
Yeah.
But still, Jonathan has been doing this, you know?
Yeah. It's an interesting dynamic among the three of them, right? On the one hand, we have Warren, who is callous. He is, you know, he's misogynistic on purpose, as you put it in your notes, which I love.
He's misogynistic on purpose. He actually chooses to be a misogynist, whereas most of us try to fight what's in our operating system software that was installed.
He goes out of his way to objectify women on multiple planes. Like, not even, it's not just this one thing. He has a whole system for objectifying women. And then sort of not quite in opposition to Warren, but in terms of the trio, in opposition, I can't speak. In opposition to Warren, we have Jonathan, who is, he's presented as the weakest of the three of them. He's, I mean, there's a joke in this episode about being Mad Dog 3.
Yeah.
Like, he is the lowest rung on this ladder, on this hierarchical toxic masculinity ladder.
Yeah.
And he's the one who resists most often. He's the one who's like, we weren't going to kill anybody. We're crime lords. He's the one who has this strong vision of himself as kind of a powerful trickster who's like stealing the power that he gets and leaning into the villain role, but not in a way that he wants to be dangerous.
Yeah.
And not in a way where he truly understands the degree to which he is participating in a system that is toxic and deadly, just as much so as Warren's toxic, deadly misogyny, right? And then, so we've got these two, and they're kind of opposite each other, and Jonathan is the one who is more so than Andrew, like bringing up, hey, what about this? What about that? And then Andrew in the middle is this like sliding scale because he's deeply emotional. He cries over Katrina's body, which I find
He's
weirdly
crying
moving.
for him, though. He's not crying for her.
He's crying for the situation, is how I read it. He doesn't. Both Jonathan and Andrew, to me, strike me as people who have not questioned the harmful repercussions of their behavior, which is why they are so shocked when Katrina says this is rape.
Right.
Because it is clear to me in that moment that Andrew and Jonathan have an idea in their head about what rape is, and this is not
exactly.
it. Whereas Warren doesn't care.
No.
At all.
Yeah.
And he is the one, he has there's no change in affect when she's dead. But Andrew, I was talking about Andrew as this kind of emotional creature in as much as he's allowed to be that. And it's such a bummer when at the end he sides with Warren, that ultimately the pursuit of the hegemonic ideal of masculinity that is violent and controlling is the position that he sides with in the end. Like, it's such a bummer. And it is fascinating that we have this kind of rank order of misogyny as though one of these is worse than the others.
Right.
It's just outwardly worse.
Yeah. No, it's all
violent and scary.
It's all violent and scary. And because some of it happens in ignorance, where if they had understood it on a broader level, they maybe wouldn't have done it or participated in it. You can say that maybe for Jonathan and Andrew. The fact is they didn't bother to think about it from anybody's perspective. They didn't bother to think about what this does to women. And the women that they're like, we've been making this joke, chicks, right? That they're going to be getting all of these women. And the only way they can do it is through brainwashing, which is kind of terrifying. It's all just really terrible. But you know what? I got to tell you, Noelle, you know why I never took my kids to see the orchestra?
Oh, no. Why?
Too much sax and violins. And violins.
Oh my
Too much
God.
sax and violins.
Sax and violin.
Violins, yeah. Okay. So anyway, let's move on now that we've finished discussing all that disgustingness. We've got a Tara 3 beat, which is kind of lovely.
Oh my God. So it was I love Tara. I mean, I love Tara, full stop. I love Tara in this episode.
Yeah.
I was even more delighted to realize that we have this lovely 3 beat with Tara.
Yeah.
So we see her in the break room at Double Meat Palace. We see her outside the magic box, and then we see her again at Buffy's home. And I love that there's this little It's like a little Willow Tara sandwich on Buffy despair bread. And it's so...
On Buffy despair bread.
It's so good. No, it's so good. I love, and I love just the kind of casual foreshadowing, if you will, of, Buffy says time has no meaning here. And she means work. Yeah. She means, working in fast food. But also time has no meaning here now that she's back from the dead. And also time has no meaning here because she's about to have her sense of time seriously messed with. I don't know. I enjoy little like written nuggets like that. I love Tara commenting on the break room posters with, "I have the sudden urge to dedicate my productive cooperation."
It's so cute because you know what we don't see Tara do a whole lot is make those jokes,
She doesn't joke.
Yeah, typically we don't see her making jokes, and it was really fun to see that.
And Tara doesn't joke because Tara's words are important.
Yes.
What Tara says almost always like deeply, deeply matters. Which is the whole, that's the whole thing with the last scene with her and Buffy is that she has only compassionate words for Buffy. And Buffy feels some kind of way about that.
She certainly does. Yes.
Yeah. But I love that Tara's first thought is that Willow did something, that Buffy wants to talk to her about Willow.
Yeah.
And just Tara's assumptions are very interesting to me. Tara assumes that this is about Willow, and that's why Buffy didn't want to meet at the house. Tara assumes that the chip has stopped working. And then Tara picks up immediately. Yeah. You think it's you.
Yeah.
And I love the way Buffy expresses her concerns to Tara in this scene, because Tara is a trustworthy person.
Yeah.
We know this. We've seen a lot of Tara being very trustworthy and being that like loving presence for Buffy specifically when Joyce dies. But what I love about the writing here is the way that Buffy clearly wants to open up to Tara, but is also kind of in that space of, I don't want to talk about this, but also I don't know what happens if I say this to this person. It's really, really good. The way she kind of talks around the issue. I feel different. There are things that, and she just kind of can't put the words together. And she says, "I think maybe I came back wrong." And Tara's response immediately is, "No, absolutely not." It's just, it's so well written. Yeah. It feels so on brand for Tara. Like this feels like the Tara that I love to see.
Right. Yeah.
And it is a relief. Just to see her, to have that loving presence. Like when I see Tara on screen, for the most part, I know that something awesome is going to happen. Oh boy. Yeah. She's just wonderful. And some of it is the writing, some of it is the performance, the seriousness with which she acknowledges Buffy's concerns. You think it's you. And just that, I want to say pointed, but that sounds kind of negative, but that highly specific observation. I love that Tara pays attention. It's just, Tara is the perfect person for Buffy to be having this conversation with for multiple reasons.
Tara
not
is
just
the
because she
perfect
has
person
access
for anyone who has a problem. Tara's the person you want to talk to about it.
Well, Tara really strikes me, with her access to magic, especially, really strikes me as like a holy person in this space. I mean, at the end, when she's sitting with Buffy in her home, it's like she's hearing confession, except that it's so much more intimate because these two people know each other and they're looking at each other. And it's just this, I can't, like, I'm so overwhelmed by that loving presence for Buffy as she's going through this thing that I just want to say, like, sweetie, no, like, you're fine. Like, it's really okay.
Yeah.
But it's clearly, it is so distressing to Buffy, and then to have Tara be so calm and centered about all of it is just, it is a lovely bookend on some real awful stuff. But in between those conversations with Buffy, we get this little interaction with Willow and Tara outside the magic box where they're ostensibly talking about Buffy. You know, Willow says, we miss her, and Tara says, I'm sure she feels the same way about you. But they're also talking about each other.
Yeah.
And then Tara has this little, like, half smile when she says she's glad Willow's doing better. It's so, so sweet.
It is so sweet.
And it
I know.
fits.
I love that whole interaction is so heartbreaking. And Willow, you know, Willow's deep desire to assure Tara that it's all okay. It's all okay. You know, oh God, it is so sweet.
Yeah. And I think it fits really neatly into some of the metaphors that this episode is working with, just in terms of the words or the action not lining up necessarily with what's really going on. Especially for Buffy in her non-relationship with Spike. You know, and we'll get there when we get there. But, you know, they're talking about, Willow and Tara talking about Buffy, but also talking about each other, the kind of tentative but also frantic need to be present for each other. It's great.
Oh,
it's great.
God, it's so sad. I mean, it's lovely and it's sweet and it's so sad. It breaks my heart every time.
But I want to dive into this last scene with Tara and Buffy. Specifically, I love the in-world explanation that it's like, it's just a cellular change, that Buffy's different, but she's Buffy. She's still Buffy.
You know, she's just got a little cosmic sunburn.
Yeah, just, you know, it's like that it is purely physical, and in terms of Spike's chip, really just a cosmetic shift, which I enjoy so much. It's such a weird explanation. Like, how does the chip know? But
it is.
Who
but
cares?
You know what? Fine. I accept it.
Who
like,
cares?
how does the chip know human from demon anyway? I mean, honestly, I would always think it was in Spike's brain that if Spike knows the difference, then the chip knows the difference. And Spike knows that Buffy is human. So he would, but whatever. I don't know. Whatever. Cosmic sunburn, fine. Check. Got it. Moving on.
Fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's one of those things. And I feel like it fits really nicely, too, with the theme about Buffy's physicality and how much of what she's able to, what she's struggling with and what she's able to experience in terms of feeling any connection to this existence after being brought back from heaven happens through her physical body.
Yeah.
It's really only when she's having sex with Spike that she's able to access any sort of feeling. So I like that it is a physical shift, but that she is at her core herself. But then Tara asks if Buffy loves Spike.
Yeah.
And she says, it's okay if you do, and it's okay if you don't, in this scene that I just, oh my God. That her whole, like, I absolve you of any perceived sin you have committed line is fantastic.
Oh, and I also love, too, the way that Tara responds to, like, when she understands what's happening with Spike. And she's like, I can see, it's okay if you love him. I can see why you would. You know, he's helped us out a lot and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It is so, oh God, Tara's just the best. Tara is a a fucking beam of sunlight in this whole thing. And then you've got Buffy's, complete breakdown, which kills me every single time. And that moment where she's like, please don't forgive me. Please don't forgive me.
Yeah.
And oh my God.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about forgiveness for a minute.
Oh God.
Let's talk about what's happening there.
It's so
Please don't forgive me. What does that mean? What does that mean to you specifically? Somebody who has all kinds of
I have all kinds of issues with the idea of forgiveness. Well, I mean, okay, for anybody who listened to my podcast Big Strong, yes, there is an episode and I can't remember what it is, but I'll find it. If anybody wants it, I'll figure out which one it is. But it's one where I go on a big long rant about forgiveness, and the fact is that forgiveness is something that so if you go back to the episode, I Only Have Eyes for You, in which Buffy was having a real difficult time forgiving herself for Angel being turned and seeing that as her fault. And then they're talking about how this guy who killed his teacher that he was in love with, has to be forgiven. And Giles says something like, we don't forgive people because they've earned it or they deserve it. We forgive people because they need it, which I also think is kind of bullshit. I think that you forgive somebody when they ask for forgiveness and stop doing the thing that hurt you, when they care enough, but there is also like a moving on that you can do, which is separate. We tend to package forgiveness in the person who was harmed as a requirement that unless you forgive this person who hurt you, you will never be able to move on. It's never going to be okay for you. That forgiveness is something that you do for you, which I think is total bullshit. I think that forgiveness is something that you do for somebody else if they ask for it, if they're not going to do it again, and you can decide to give it to them or you cannot. Your job is to unfuck whatever it is that they did to you. Unfortunately, that's your job, is to unfuck it. But forgiveness is not that. Now, okay, all of that said, Noelle knew. I saw the look on your face too, and you're like, yeah, let's talk about forgiveness, because I have a whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
This is my whole thing.
Well, because I also have a very different view on forgiveness than you do.
Oh, what is your view?
Well, I think forgiveness, I absolutely agree with you that it gets lumped in with all of these other ideas that are separate things. So the idea of like moving on from a hurt gets lumped in with forgiveness, or helping someone to be a better person gets lumped in with forgiveness.
Your fucking job. No.
Right. Like, I think we fold forgiveness into too many things. I think forgiveness is the choice. I think forgiveness is a conscious choice to extend mercy to someone and to maintain or rebuild a connection with someone who has harmed you. So forgiveness for me means something has happened. There is a split. Something has happened that has divided us in some way, or pushed us apart from each other in some way. And and forgiveness comes in as I want to extend mercy and compassion toward this person so that we can continue to be friends, partners.
Right, but doesn't that require
have a positive familial relationship, whatever it is.
Yeah, but that requires that person be sorry. Right? I mean, that person has to acknowledge what they've done and know that what they did was wrong and be sorry for it, or they're just going to do it again.
I think that depends on
your
so relationship.
Than I am.
Well, it's just a completely. You and I speak different apology languages.
Yeah.
Like what feels like an apology to you, I think. Now that we're getting deeply personal on our pop culture podcast,
I know, right? Whatever.
But, I think that the relationship between forgiveness and an apology depends on the harmed person's or the harmed party's relationship to apology and what feels like an apology and what makes a meaningful apology.
Right.
Because depending on the wrong and the hurt and how intimate the relationship is, it may be a let's move on from this. Like this was a mistake. Let's move on. And it may be we need to specifically acknowledge these are the harms that took place. And, like expressions of regret can be an apology. Like there's a whole sea of things that can be an apology.
Yeah.
But forgiveness, to me, I think that you can see that someone is sorry without them having to apologize verbally. I
mean, if they're sorry and they're not going to do it again, if they acknowledge what they've done. My thing is that I was so forgiving, like my whole life. I would forgive everybody of everything that they did all the time. And then they would go around and smack me again and again and again. And I would be like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Never held anybody accountable. Then I had a certain period of my life in which I was like, fuck that nonsense. And I went completely the other way. And now I don't know, like for me to forgive somebody, they have to not do it again. They have to not come around and just start doing the same shit again. And I need to know that they're not going to do that. So that's what forgiveness is for me. And I, like, I don't know. It's just, it's really, really obviously a big sticking point for me. And as we get to talking about Buffy, whether or not she needs to be forgiven, which I think is a question.
Right. So how do you feel about that when she says, please don't forgive me?
I mean, okay, first of all, like everything that Buffy goes through in this episode, I feel very, very deeply. This episode breaks my heart for Buffy. I get why she's ashamed of her relationship with Spike, because it's Spike. Like when you're sleeping with somebody that you're ashamed of, like I get that, but I also get why she wants him, because I mean, like it's Spike, I mean, Spike is very wantable. But she's got this whole thing. Trauma can present as a lack of feeling, and that lack of being able to feel what you would ordinarily feel can be really disorienting. When I was extremely traumatized, I felt all the negative emotions. I felt all the sadness and the anger and all that kind of stuff, but I couldn't feel the things that I knew I felt. Like I couldn't feel love. I couldn't feel happiness. I couldn't feel joy. I couldn't feel any of that kind of stuff, And I always found that very disorienting, because I was like, well, I know that these are people that I love, but I cannot feel it, So Buffy, in this traumatized state, reaching out for something that makes her feel something, I think is completely understandable. She's not hurting anybody. As a matter of fact, she is delighting the fuck out of Spike. Nobody's getting hurt by what she's doing. Except I guess you could say she's not home enough to be with Dawn or whatever, but I mean, God forbid, she's taking some time for herself after, being pulled back from heaven into this hellscape by her friends, it's a trauma and she's dealing with that. But the unwillingness to forgive yourself, the need to be held accountable when you feel like you've done something wrong, like I feel that very, very deeply. Like my ability to forgive myself has been severely altered as well from the trauma and the experience that I went through, and the things that I did that I wish I hadn't done, choices I made that I wish I hadn't made. And so like the need to be held accountable for that by somebody, because everybody is always telling you, no, you were a victim. You went through all this stuff. It was truly terrible. It was awful. All the stuff that Tara says, all the compassion that Tara extends to Buffy. When people extend that to me, I'm like, fuck off. Somebody tell me that this was wrong, because you feel like you're being gaslit. You feel like everybody's so fucking compassionate, and you feel like you are the only one who sees what you did, and that you cannot be forgiven until you are held accountable for what you've done, and nobody will hold you accountable. So I will say, but it's possible. It's possible that possibly I over-identify a little bit with what Buffy's going through here. But when she says that, don't forgive me, please don't forgive me, like I fucking get it, Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a hard moment.
Oh, God, yeah.
A number of reasons. I mean, it shines such a light on what she's truly struggling with, which is this sense of fractured identity. This can't be me.
Yeah.
This way that I'm behaving doesn't align with my sense of who I am. So if here's this like loving, holy presence in the form of Tara, goddess of compassion, being like, it's okay if you love him and it's okay if you don't.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. It's okay that you let him do these things to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is like, that's hard to integrate. If you're feeling shame about what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and someone says, yeah, it's actually okay. Like,
You're not
it makes
hurting
sense
anybody.
to me.
Exactly. Like, that's, yeah.
Yeah. Well, she is, except here's the interesting thing. She is hurting Spike, and he's enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is the part that seems to factor into the complicated Buffy's inner life in this episode gets real complex real quick.
It does. Well, I mean, because this comes after she just beat the living hell out of Spike, and she has this horrified, I could never be your girl, right? She has this horrified look on her face when she realizes what she's done to him. But he's saying, yes, put it all on me, you know? And also when she beats him like that, she moves closer into this dark space, which is where he wants her. So, she doesn't want to do this stuff. I'm using him? How is that okay? But he's okay with it. Like, he is absolutely serving himself up and saying, yes, use me, beat me, because that has a darkness to it that he really, really wants out of that relationship.
But she's also beating herself up in that moment.
Yeah. It reminds me of that moment in Who Are You, right? When Faith is beating herself up, right?
Yes.
And saying all of those things. You're nothing. You're terrible, all that kind of stuff. When she's saying this to Spike, on some level, she's saying that to herself. You can't feel anything.
You're dead inside.
You're dead inside, right? Ugh.
Yeah.
God. Yeah. No, it's just, it's so fucking hard. And this episode just fucking hits me where I live. And Noelle, what does a vegetarian zombie eat?
Oh, we know this one.
Do you?
Grains.
Yes, that's true. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Dawn, right? For a brief moment of respite,
Dawn.
right? I know. I feel
God.
bad. I feel bad for Dawn for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, because this is the kind of thing that makes everybody hate Dawn, right? Because we are so focused on Buffy. I think
I'm sorry, really?
Yeah.
In this episode?
Yeah. In this
Oh,
episode.
God, I feel so bad for her.
I know. I do too. Like, I mean, it's bad. But like the thing with Dawn is that Dawn, with good reason and with better reason, I think, than Joyce. I think she's used better in this function than Joyce ever was, but she does become a conflict vending machine. She is just constantly mad at Buffy. It's not like I knew you'd be home, with these little cutting remarks and everything. But Dawn also is like, her sister came back when Buffy is saying, I need to go. And she says, Dawny, I have to, which is exactly what she said before jumping into the thing and killing herself, into the energy and killing herself in the gift. The heartbreak of this, for Dawn, and what I feel so deeply for Dawn is that she's not enough. Like Buffy jumped into the energy and killed herself to save Dawn, but then in bargaining, she crawls right up there and is about to jump off again. And Dawn says, no, please come back with me, be with me. And Buffy can't be there with her because Buffy is just, even when Buffy's there, she's not really there, because she's going through all this trauma. Dawn can't understand that. But here we have this moment where she's like, I have to go to the police. I have to tell them what I did. I may go away for a long time. And Dawn's just like, there you are. Dawn's like experiencing this abandonment. She's feeling super hurt. And so we just have her in a state where she's constantly complaining and yelling at Buffy. Now, like in Gone, when Buffy's floating the pizza, I'm with Dawn. Like, I'm on Dawn's side. Like, I'm on Dawn's side on this. Like, I completely get it. But I think that from the perspective, when we watch it from Buffy's perspective, when we see and experience everything that Buffy's going through, but we don't really experience anything with Dawn. We just experience the way that Buffy experiences Dawn. then it just feels like this kid is constantly complaining, like things are hard enough for Buffy, and this kid is constantly complaining, which is also true. Now, is it a justified complaint? Do you feel Dawn's pain? Yes, I do. Anyway.
Oh, yeah,
but
I do
this is
too.
why I think a lot of people end up not liking Dawn, because Dawn is just constantly bitching at Buffy, and we don't really get, I think, as much of a chance in the text to feel what she's feeling here, like to empathize with her.
Yeah, it is all kind of behind the scenes a little bit. You have to
want to like Dawn. You have to want to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that you have to want to see things from Dawn's perspective in order to really feel what she's going through. But oh man, I do.
Oh,
it's so hard. It's so hard. You know, and of course, Buffy's struggle is in part that she doesn't feel any connection to these people in her life.
Yeah.
So she feels a lack of connection, so she pulls away even further.
Oh, yeah.
Which makes the people in her life feel less connected to her.
Right.
Especially
Willow,
her
we
sister.
miss her.
It's
Yeah.
Ooh, it's painful.
Oh, God,
it's really
so
painful.
hard.
I feel so terrible for Dawn.
My heart breaks for Dawn. It really, really does. But like, this is the kind of thing where, like, yeah, okay, when people complain about Dawn, this is the kind of stuff that they complain about, because we're not really encouraged to feel Dawn's pain here, and it's really easy, kind of not to.
Because we're so deep in Buffy's pain that Dawn becomes just a little add-on to Buffy's pain, as opposed to being her own person with her own perspective.
Yeah.
This is really, like, we're really, really about Buffy. I mean, a lot of the time. It's her show.
A lot of the time,
but also, like, in this episode in particular, we're really, like, Buffy's really, really struggling with this internal sense of who she is. And the way that this all, like, comes together in this episode, I think pulls her even further from, I mean, Spike deliberately pulls her further from the people in her life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's, like, we have an abuse analogy going on with Spike and Buffy, and the separation, of you from the people in your life is one of the first things that abusive personality does. So yeah, it's oh God, there's a lot of stuff going on here. But the really wonderful thing in this episode that I think will be fun to talk about, the thing that I usually hate, and the thing that you love, is the dream sequence, right?
Yes.
So we got a nice dream sequence. Tell me what you pulled out of this dream sequence.
We get a phenomenal dream in this episode. I love this dream. I love everything about this dream. So they're in the woods. Spike tells Buffy, Buffy's distressed. This girl is dead. Of course she's distressed, right? Spike tells her to go home, crawl into her cozy bed, and stay there. Yeah. And then Buffy dreams about the chorus of voices that she heard in the woods whispering, "What did you do, Buffy?" Yeah. Which I love. And Spike, then we see Spike is in bed with her and snuggles in with her and comforts her, saying, "It'll be our little secret." And what I love about this bit of the dream, which I think, depending on how you're watching, maybe doesn't read as a dream at first.
Yeah, at first it doesn't.
At first it seems like maybe he literally is there in bed with her in her room. But I love that we're pairing Katrina's death with sex with Spike for Buffy. And oh boy, the implications of that are so fun and interesting to get into. But when he says it'll be our little secret, is Dream Spike referring to you killed a girl in the woods? Is he referring to we're sleeping together?
Yeah.
We don't know. It doesn't matter because it's both.
Right.
So we create this overlay. Ooh, weird choice of words, Noelle. We create this weird. Well, weird, but maybe accidentally on purpose choice of words of this overlay of Buffy and Spike and Buffy and Katrina. So they're in bed together in the dream. Buffy and Spike are. She rolls on top of him, and then we shift to Spike's crypt. Mm-hmm. And the eyeline match that we get from the close-up of Buffy's face to the shot of Spike suggests that her focus is on the handcuffs and not on his face, which I really appreciate, right? Because he's brought those, we see him bring the handcuffs out earlier when they're having their not quite State of the Union conversations. Right. And he says, do you trust me? He asks what I love when he says, do you even like me? Yeah. And she says, sometimes. And then he brings out the handcuffs and he says, do you trust me? And she says, never. So now we're in this dreamscape and we get this, the camera follows her gaze as she's looking not at his face, but up his arms to the handcuffs. And then we cut to Buffy throwing a punch in the woods. And then Buffy is on top of Katrina in the woods. And they're fully clothed, but Katrina's hands are cuffed above her head. And Dream Buffy asks, do you trust me? And Dream Katrina smiles and then closes her eyes and moans. But it's Buffy's moan that we hear. That is some complex... I mean, okay, all right. So the dead girl, the girl that you think you killed accidentally is now the lover that you are ashamed of. I love this dream. Yeah. I love this dream for a number of reasons, but the main reason I love this dream is it feels like a real dream. Yeah, it does. It does feel like a real dream. Like I would describe something to you and it would be this kind of like bonkers scenario of like I was having sex with Spike, but it wasn't Spike. It was Katrina. It was this girl that I killed, and then it was Spike, and there were handcuffs. Yeah, exactly. Yup. It functions visually and metaphorically. I think the way that dreams do for a lot of people. But what I love is pairing pairing sex with Spike with killing Katrina as this like self-other sort of mirroring, because it is Buffy killing Spike in the dream in a minute and Buffy killing Katrina, but then Buffy is the one repeating Spike's line about trust. Yeah. It's wild. I freaking love it. I love it. I love what it says about Buffy's relationship to herself. It's so good. It's delightful. So the dream. So okay. So we actually haven't finished this dream yet because I'm just fangirling all over it. Yeah. But the dream shifts again to Buffy and Spike having sex, and then Spike seems to be unconscious or asleep as Buffy lowers a stake to his chest. But then Buffy stakes Katrina, and Katrina's eyes snap open and they're cloudy and dead. And she's obviously a corpse. Yeah. And that's the dream. And it's real good. You're dead inside. Right? I mean, this is Buffy and herself and her shame and trying to kill the parts of her that, that killed Katrina and that sleep with Spike. And it's interesting. It's definitely an interesting dream. And as dream sequences go, I didn't hate it the way that I hate most of them. So. Well, and also the literal death, right? Yeah. Of pairing this literal dead body of this woman in the woods with the literal dead body question mark of the thing she's been having sex with and enjoying and feeling connected to when it's dead things. Dead things. Spike is a dead thing. Spike is one of the dead things in the name of the episode. Yeah, absolutely. And then all of the emotion all of the like layered, pain of this dream nightmare comes out in the alley when Buffy and Spike are fighting.
Yeah.
And she says, a girl is dead because of me. You can't understand why this is killing me. And that's all it is to you, just another body. All of that speaks to Buffy's struggle to feel alive. I mean, we're equating sex with death, equating violence against women with what Buffy perceives as her own failure.
Yeah.
Why do I let Spike do these things to me? Struggling with integrating her physical experience with the knowledge and memory of being actually dead.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Like,
Oh my
Buffy is
God,
also one of the dead things.
Oh, she is one of the dead things. Oh my God. I never thought about that. But yes, absolutely. Oh my God. Wow. Well done, Noelle.
Well, thank you. I mean, it is a lot. And it's part of what is such a bummer, I think, about all of this is that it's still somehow not fully explored in a way that I find satisfying.
Yeah.
Like at the end, we're so deep in Buffy's POV, and she's so like just broken up over trying to make all of these parts of her newly alive again experience like all work together. And somehow it still doesn't connect up enough for me that at the end when she says, please don't forgive me, I don't just feel like, oh, sweetie, no. It's kind of, I don't know. I almost want them to go there even harder than they do. And they go pretty hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Well, that's very nice. Dream sequences do not speak to me on the level that they speak to you. I love the stuff that you pull out from it. I think it's so interesting. So well done. One of the things that I wanted to bring in though, before we finish up our discussion of dead things is, although we've actually got quite a bit more to go, we got a lot of notes for something that we did not enjoy. There are so many resonances in this episode with previous episodes. We've called out a few, but more than any other episode I could think of, this episode references other places in Buffy. It textually references I Was Made to Love You. We have actually flashbacks from I Was Made to Love You and all of that. But there's also, like Faith in Bad Girls and Consequences, right? Spike tries to weight a body down and throw it in the river only to have it pop up again almost immediately, right?
I love the continuity that people go missing in Sunnydale all the time and nobody bats an eye, but if you try to hide a body...
Yes, it's absolutely that it pops right up and it's on the river. Like Faith, Spike does the morality math. Well, what's one dead girl in all these people that you've saved? Buffy in beating herself up like Faith does in Who Are You? This is a Faith episode with no Faith in it or mentioned, but this is very, very much a Faith episode. When Buffy's about to go to the police, she says, Donnie, I have to, which is what she says in the gift. Warren tries to set up Buffy for the murder that he committed, similar to the way that Faith tried to set Buffy up in season 3. And so Warren and Faith, unfortunately, are having these kind of alignments that I don't particularly care for. But yeah, it's really like, it's kind of fun how many, references we pull in that are not textual enough to even be like winked at, like nobody's being like wink, wink. We're just doing this stuff again. And so when you have Buffy, in this sort of out of time experience, throughout this episode, and her time is getting fucked up in this episode, that to have so many of these kind of memories sort of drifting up, so its history doesn't repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes, that we're having a lot of that happening here. And I thought that was really kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean, Buffy staking Katrina, now that's in a dream sequence, but Buffy staking Katrina like Faith staking Alan.
Yep.
And then the whole, the morality math is like that parallel, the Spike Faith parallel feels really strong here to me. I mean, he even says, there's my girl when she when she kicks, does she kick him? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But Faith says the same thing to Buffy as she's stabbed in the gut.
Yeah.
Which is a lot. Like,
There's a lot of faith
to...
in here. There's a lot of faith in here. And it's interesting that Faith would resurface, pardon the pun, in this episode so much and so strongly, so many references to faith. And the only thing I think of is written by Stephen S. Tonight, who didn't get a chance to write Faith, and maybe he was sad about that, so he came in and brought all the faith he could with him. So I think that was really funny. But also, we have a little bit in our notes about kink shaming. So yeah, why don't we talk about this a little bit?
It's such a strange little rant that I'm on.
I love that you're on
mostly...
it. I love that you're on it. Yes, because I think this is something. Yeah, because we automatically, I've talked a lot about how like culture will install an operating system in you, and we have in our culture a lot of this like really toxic purity. To the point where what we define as pure, like if you enjoy sex, that can sometimes be a problem. So yes, I want to hear everything that you have to say about kink shaming all the time, because I think that we should take this. If nobody's being hurt, it's okay. Like that is the bottom line. Nobody's being consensual or non-consensually hurt. I'm sorry. Sometimes people get hurt because they want to get hurt, and that's okay too.
Well, and that is why it's so tricky in the portrayal in this show, in this non-relationship relationship that Spike and Buffy have, right? That's when they're having their conversation at the beginning of the episode. He's like, you make it hurt in all the wrong places, but he's beaming as he says it. And this is supposed to be weird and creepy, ? Like, I don't know. I'm tired of hearing myself talk about kink shaming with respect to the Buffy Spike thing.
Yeah, but it's there.
But I also feel like this episode really dials it up in a way that I have a hard time. There are a couple of reasons that I have a hard time getting on board with Buffy's internal struggle. But this really is one of them. Willow just kind of casually says, "We know you've been all tied up." And Buffy has this look of horror. Yeah. And that's a kink joke. Yeah. And I don't like it. No. I don't like it. And then Spike in this sequence that feels almost like a dream sequence to me. Yeah. When he's whispering to her and he says, "What would they think of you if they found out all the things you've done?" And he says this like she's done something other than have a lot of lair trashing, house demolishing, impact play heavy sex. Right. Which the way he says it implies that she has done something or a series of things that are so morally reprehensible that her friends would disown her forever if they knew. And Spike is maybe not the person that you want to say, tell your friends that you've been hooking up with, but except what is the problem exactly?
It's not enough, I think. I completely understand. When Willow says that, it's clearly Willow isn't kink shaming, because Willow when she says tied up, she just means busy. But the fact that in the text, the writer wrote it specifically to kind of activate this shame within Buffy, and not about who she's sleeping with, because that's not it. It's just being tied up. The fact that if she had been tied up, if she had let Spike use the cuffs or whatever, that somehow that would be wrong, which it's not, and there is nothing wrong with that. So I think that I'm glad that you bring up the kink shaming, because along with a lot of the other things that end up in our stories, they tell us what's okay and what's not,
well, and it just feels lazy to me. And I know that this is 2002. Yeah. But it's also a lazy joke. Yes. It feels, the whole thing, the whole Buffy's shame at sleeping with Spike thing. Yeah. Doesn't it does not work for me on this level because it is not explored deep enough in the text. Right. The text is very surface. The text is you are having violent rough sex with this dude who doesn't have a soul.
Yeah.
And that is morally or ethically wrong. And I'm just like, no, those things don't go together.
No, the only place where I kind of connected with her sense of shame is the moment where she says to Tara, so I'm using him. How is that okay?
Yeah.
Except that he's fine with it. He knows you don't. It's not like she's saying I love you and lying to him. She is in no way lying to him. There's nothing that she's doing that's wrong. I could see her being like embarrassed that she's sleeping with Spike because it's Spike. You know, I mean,
well, and he is a literal killer. Like, he makes a joke about it in that opening
that's the
conversation.
Thing, when I ate a decorator, and she doesn't even so much as cringe at that.
Yeah,
you know. Yeah.
But it's not portrayed that way. It's not portrayed as I am ashamed because I'm sleeping with a bad man. Yeah. It's portrayed as I am ashamed because I am having sex that involves impact play.
Exactly.
That's how it's portrayed. And I don't care for it. I don't like it. And it makes it hard for me to feel sympathetic toward Buffy.
And
I want to.
I know.
Girlfriend was dead. Like, actually, literally dead. Clawed her way out of her own grave. And we don't spend any time on that.
How about we feel bad for Buffy because she lives in a world in which this is not okay. And fuck that shit, right? Because she believes that it's not okay. She believes that it's shameful. But also the text believes that it's shameful. That's what the problem is.
Yes. That's where the issue is.
Yes.
That is. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
That's all right. Sometimes it's hard to like make those distinctions, but that's really, I think, what it comes down to is that the text is rubber stamping the shame. The fact that Buffy feels the shame is not necessarily a problem. She's wrong, but that she feels it, like you can understand, you know. But the text is rubber stamping that shame as being absolutely appropriate, I think, is where we have the problem. Even though Tara comes in and says that's okay, it's not. It's fine. It's okay. It's okay.
It's not that simple.
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite Tara lines.
Oh my God, I love her so much.
Buffy says, so I'm using him. And Tara says, it's not that simple. It's like, hell yeah,
and also he loves every minute of it. He is a consenting partner in that. So,
totally.
You're not responsible for that. But here is my question for you, though, because I had a realization during this watch of this episode. I have seen this episode like a lot, because I watch Buffy like every year, like the whole thing through. The moment where she's dancing with everybody at the bronze, she goes up into this balcony area, right? And we're watching, like, everything around her disappears, except she's watching, Willow and Xander and Anya dancing on the floor down below. And then Spike comes up behind her and they have sex and he says all that stuff to her. But everything is silent. Everything is weird. Everything is subdued. It just occurred to me that this isn't actually Spike and Buffy having sex. This is Buffy having a fantasy about Spike while she's standing up on the balcony watching her friends, that she is hearing him say to her what she's secretly thinking. And I don't think that there is a textual, like absolute textual confirmation of that. But when I read it in that way, it made so much more sense to me because that scene has never made any sense to me. How are you going to have sex like that up on the balcony? There's people all over the place. Everybody can see you. Like, she's so ashamed of having sex with Spike. There she is up in the shadow. As a metaphor, it works a lot better than as actual reality. And the idea that this is her fantasy, that this is her wanting him even when she's out with her friends and not being able to stay and be with her friends, that she still separates even when he's not there. I actually really like that a lot better with that read. I'm not sure that textually it's defensible, but that's the read that I enjoy.
It's hilarious is that was my first read on it. And then when I watched it again, I was like, no, this is literally happening. And now I'm bummed. Like, I like that read better. I think that is it's a better moment. I mean, I find that whole thing so upsetting. Like that whole interaction, the way, like his affect with her in that sequence.
And the don't, and then he says, stop me. And that whole thing is really upsetting.
It's really upsetting. It's really, really upsetting. the way that he's specifically and pointedly declaring that she is separate from her friends.
Yeah.
And that there is no, that she has sinned against her friend group and there is no hope for reconciliation. Yeah. And it's just, it is some evil, some evil Spike. Yeah. But also, he's evil. Yeah. Like, it is absolutely something Spike would do. Yeah. Especially as he is getting more and more invested in this narrative of her belonging to and with him. Essentially leaning into her insecurity about what they're doing together.
Yeah.
But it absolutely reads as a fantasy sequence or a not quite dream sequence. Yeah. And I think if we didn't have a literal dream sequence in this episode, the case for that is not reality would be much stronger.
I think so.
For me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think textually, I think it's meant to be textual. I think it's meant to be actually literally happening. I like the read that it's a fantasy sequence better. It makes that whole thing work so much better for me because it's never worked for me. Yeah.
It doesn't work for me either. Yeah. It feels too removed from not just what's going on at the Bronze, but also from the tone of the rest of the episode.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I don't care for it.
It's weird. Noelle, you want to hear a joke about paper?
Sure.
Never mind. It's terrible.
Oh no! Oh no!
All right. What's your favorite part?
Oh my gosh! What is my favorite? I mean, it's Tara?
Oh, yeah, it's Tara.
Come on,
it's Tara.
It's Tara. It's Tara in that last scene specifically, where she's so loving and so she lets Buffy off the hook before Buffy has even revealed that she's on the hook. It's great.
Yeah. May we all be as compassionate with ourselves as Tara is with Buffy.
Exactly. Oh, God. Exactly. You know, a little Tara in your mind when you start when you start feeling
channel
down
your inner Tara. Absolutely.
Yeah. What's your favorite part?
Oh, Tara. Yeah, I mean same. I mean yeah, this episode what else? What else is going to be your favorite part? I mean, it's all Tara. Oh, it's all terrible. But then there's Tara.
Oh, it's all terrible.
Which makes it nice, which is weird.
If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, connect with the show on Twitter. Follow @Chipperish and use the hashtag StillPretty.
This episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now. So thank you to our December producers, Shelley, Kristen, Jonathan, Rose, Erica, Alice, Abigail, and Sarah.
To find out how you too can support Chipperish Media, visit patreon.com/Chipperish. Other ways to show your support: write a great review on Apple Podcasts, tell your friends about the show, or look a little pounded, just around the eyes. And this week's special message for our power producers: don't think about the evil blood-sucking fiend. Focus on anything other than the evil blood-sucking fiend.
Chipperish Media is going to be taking a holiday break, but we will be back on January 7th with Older and Far Away, the 14th episode of Season 6. Until then, come share in the joy of our groove thing.